Hey Flower Tribe, it's Kelly Lehman and Lucy Lehman, and today we want to take you on a March garden tour through the secret gardens in back of our flower farm. If we haven't met yet, it's nice to meet you. My name is Kelly Lehman. I'm the owner of Cranberry Fields Flower Farm here in Cranberry, New Jersey. And I love giving you guys fun, free flower tips. So please feel free to subscribe to this YouTube channel and hit the bell notification so you know whenever we post another fun, free flower tip video. So guys, I also wanted to let you know that I created a Facebook group for our flower tribe. A lot of you have asked me if there was a place where you can post pictures of your own garden successes and some of your garden challenges. And so I made a Kelly Lehman's Flower Tribe Facebook group. So I'll put a link to that in descriptions below. And please feel free to join us over there. Post pictures from your own gardens. I love seeing your flowers, and I love seeing some of the problems that you're having in your garden. And then please feel free to post questions about your flowers, and I'm encouraging you to please start answering each other's questions. So it's really fun to hear the advice that our flower tribe has for each other. You've turned into this beautiful flower family, helping each other and supporting each other, and you're from all over the world. So it's a really exciting place to hop on over to, and it's like a fun hangout room. So I'll try to get over there at least 2 or 3 times a week to answer some of the questions, but I really encourage you guys to answer each other's questions because a lot of you know a lot more than me when it comes down to flowers. So let's dive right in. So it's March, it's towards the end of March right now, and we did a major spring cleanup here in the secret garden. I mean, this place was a complete disaster only about 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to show you some before and after pics, but this is what it looks like now after we did the cleanup. But before this, it was completely overgrown with lots of leaves, lots of weeds. There was a lot of hydrangeas that we hadn't pruned back probably in about 5 years. So those of you that kind of follow our channel, you know that I'm not a huge fan of pruning back your hydrangeas because a lot of times it's just not necessary. So I have left most of my hydrangeas intact for the past few years, but I noticed that this last season, like last summer, I wasn't getting quite as many hydrangea blooms as I usually get. So we came in here, and for some of the hydrangeas like our limelights and some of our Annabelles that come in on new growth, those are the hydrangeas that come in on flowers that are formed the spring of that season. Those guys we kind of cut back by about 1/3, but we left the Nico hydrangeas alone. We left the endless summer hydrangeas alone because those guys also come in on what's known as old wood. And if we were to have come back here and pruned back those guys, I would have cut off a lot of my hydrangea blooms from this year. If you want to know more about pruning hydrangeas and exactly how to prune your own, I have a whole bunch of videos that I will link at the end of this, and it's a whole playlist, and there's a ton of really specific videos on how to prune back your hydrangea, so you can check that out if you like. So let's take a walk around. I want to show you the who's who in the garden and some really fun things that are coming up here, and I want to give you some great tips on things I've done wrong in the past that could save you a lot of grief, and show you some fun stuff. So come on, let's go take a walk. Come on, Lucy, you want to come? So these are the daffodils. These are the first guys that kind of pop up in the garden. And we made sure that when we cleaned up around them, we were super careful not to kind of rip off those new stems and thinking they were somehow weeds. So sometimes people will come out and they'll weed their gardens, or they'll have landscapers come out and they wind up ripping up some of these spring beautiful leaves that are coming up, thinking that they're weeds when actually they're either crocuses or daffodils. So be really careful with your spring cleanups. And this is one of the first years that we actually have everything mulched and cleaned up by the end of March. I usually wait until like April or May, and what I found is that there were usually a ton of weeds already coming up at that time. So this year we said, let's try to get everything done early, and I found that it probably saved us hours and hours worth of work because the weeds hadn't really come up quite yet. So what we did was we cleaned out all the leaves from these garden beds. We plucked out, just a few of the tiny weeds that were popping up, and we spread some organic matter, which is always really good. So you're going to put down some organic matter around your plants. That's going to kind of give them like a boost for the soil. And then we laid down some mulch, and mulch is a really good idea because it traps a lot of the moisture that comes in from rain, and it also helps to regulate the soil temperature. But you want to make sure over here, like we kind of made a little bit of a mistake, you want to make sure that you don't have your mulch coming up this high on your plant, because plants, especially peonies and hydrangeas, they love a lot of aeration. So right now, this plant does not have as much aeration as it needs. So what I like to do is to dig out almost like a little bit of a well around my plants, especially my hydrangeas, especially my peonies, and this way it has a lot of aeration and it won't have fungal issues down here. Okay, so that's a lot better. I want to show you some of these rows of Sharons that we planted a while ago, and rows of Sharons have a way of taking over your garden. So I think I only planted like 1 or 2 of them probably about 5 years ago, and now you'll notice they're all over the garden. So I've got one that's way back here. I've got another one. Actually, there's like 5 of them over here. So each of these is like a separate plant. I'm going to wind up digging some of these up. I should have did it last weekend, but we had such a big job going on here that sometimes you got to do things in chunks. But be careful. I love rows of Sharons, but just know that they may wind up kind of taking over the garden a bit. And then we've got, who else do we have back here? We've got our tall grasses that we cut back a lot. These guys were tremendously large just like 2 weeks ago. And a lot of these hydrangeas back here, especially my limelight, were absolutely tremendous. And like I said, we just cut them back for the first time in a few years. And I want to kind of show you over here, while we're here, I want to show you my Annabelle hydrangeas. I wanted to show you something really fun that Annabelle hydrangeas do. A lot of hydrangeas do this actually. They wind up producing more plants by themselves. So what happened was, these guys were put in probably about 10 years ago, and what happened was during the season, some of the branches, especially since these were Annabelles with those heavy blooms on them, hey Lucy, they would flap to the ground. And when they flap to the ground, what happens is they would start forming their own roots from some of these stems that were trapped on the ground. And so they would form their own roots, and all of these plants surrounding this main, like mama plant, they all were planted by the plant itself. I had nothing to do with this. This is nature, God. This is the plant itself, just kind of like, like procreating. Again, the nature is amazing like that. So we started this hydrangea row with just, I don't know, maybe like 7 or 8 plants, and now there's probably about 30 of them. So if you go right down this row, you could take a look. The same thing here. We had like a major plant here, and then all these guys all around it were just kind of like, self-planted. There's one way over here, you can tell. These are all brand new hydrangea plants. Hey, I know, I see you. Okay. The star's here. We can begin again. Okay, you ready for your close-up shot? So this is what the secret garden looks like in March, and I wanted to show you the butterfly bush. So this is what the butterfly looks like. Right now, we cut it back. We gave it like a good pruning, and this plant gets tremendous. It gets really, really full and lush, but this time of year, we kind of cut it back while it was still kind of dormant. And what's going to happen is this plant is going to attract a ton of pollinators. The butterflies love coming here. The hummingbirds love coming here. It's just a beautiful place to actually sit and watch nature. And we actually have a hummingbird nest here where we put like some sugared water, and then it just attracts even more hummingbirds. So it's a really fun place in the garden, one of my favorites. And then in back of Lucy is a crepe myrtle that we trimmed back because this tree got tremendous. And I am a huge fan of flowering trees. So we have a ton of flowering trees back here in the garden, and when they're in bloom, they're just absolutely magnificent. So it's a really great idea to think about adding a flowering tree to your gardens or your landscaping. I think they're going to bring you a lot of joy. And then we've got more hydrangeas here. This is one of our endless summers, and I wanted to show you the reason why I didn't prune this gal back. On these stems are the hydrangeas, the flowers that are going to start forming this year. So if I were to have cut this plant back all the way to the ground or beneath this, I would have cut back all these little flowers that were formed last fall. So be really careful that you don't prune back your hydrangeas if you don't have to. Especially do not prune back your endless summers or your Nikos in winter or spring. You're not supposed to cut them at all after like August 1st, because all those beautiful flowers that you're going to get in the summer are actually being formed at the end of the previous summer. But I have a video on that too. It's called How to Get More Blooms from Your Hydrangeas, and I'll put that in links below also, and that kind of really explains it much better in much more detail. So let's take a walk over here. I want to show you another plant that's really good at self-propagating, and they're my lilacs. So this is one of my lilacs, and this major plant in the middle has self-propagated all the way around it. All of these little stems are their own separate lilac plants now, and this plant did this self-propagation all by itself. It's absolutely spectacular. In the spring, it's this huge burst of purple color, and I absolutely love it. I'm doing a little bit of a voiceover here because the wind picked up and it made the audio really kind of crummy. So I'm going to talk to you from behind my computer as I tell you about my hellebores. Hellebores come up even before the daffodils, and they're this really tough, sturdy, gorgeous burst of color in your early spring garden. So these guys also tend to spread out. They just get more massive each year, and they come in gorgeous colors like these beautiful purples, and then they'll come in beautiful shades of white and green, and some of them even have double petals. So this is a spectacular flower for your early spring garden. And just like 2 weeks ago, these guys actually had like snow on top of them as they were starting to come up. So the leaves had a ton of snow, and they just stood up to the elements and wound up blooming as soon as the snow melted. So they like to be planted in partial shade, which is why I kind of have them underneath my lilac bush, because it gives it the extra protection from the sun, and they just come back year after year. So it's a spectacular flower for your gardens. Thank you so much for joining us in this video, and please feel free to say hi to us over on our Cranberry Fields Instagram page, and please let me know where you're viewing this from in this great big beautiful world. I love to see how our flower tribe is growing around the globe each week. And please come over to our Kelly Lehman's Flower Tribe Facebook group and post pictures of your own garden successes and garden challenges, and please feel free to ask questions there, and please feel free to offer your own advice to other gardeners from all around the world. I also made a free PDF file for you guys talking about 4 of my must-have flowers for your gardens, and you can grab that in descriptions below, and I will see you in the next video. Flower Tribe, we're just going to take a quick test right now. Okay, let me take a peek. Test. Hey Flower Tribe, and we're going to see if this is too dark or not. Okay. To attract more, like, I'm not going to go there.